Think about the strategies you have seen fail. How do they die? Do they come crashing down with a loud noise? Or do they die slowly, quietly smothered by the day job, what you think of as the, quote, real work? Every organization and every team will struggle executing on strategy for exactly the same reason, because of the enormous amount of energy required to maintain the daily operation, also known as the whirlwind. The whirlwind suffocates the activities needed to reach your strategic goals. There are rules for executing in the face of the whirlwind. Chris McChesney, the global practice leader of execution for Franklin Covey, has spent the last 12 years perfecting the 4 disciplines of execution. 1. Focusing on the wildly important. 2. Acting on lead measures. 3. Keeping a compelling scoreboard. And 4. Creating a cadence of accountability. Chris, a leadership consultant and executive advisor, co-authored the Wall Street Journal #1 national bestseller, The 4 Disciplines of Execution. In his role developing this execution methodology, Chris has driven change efforts at one of the largest convention hotel chains in the country that resulted in a 50% increase in guest satisfaction within 9 months. At a statewide health and human services agency, the 4 disciplines contributed to a 60% reduction in reoccurrence of child maltreatment. These 4 rules work. Known for his high energy and engaging presentations, Chris has consulted with many of the world's top brands and joins us today to help us get better at executing the ideas that matter most. Let's welcome Chris McChesney.
The term burning platform is used to describe a critical situation that compels people towards focused action, and we all get that concept. So, why, in the middle of this global crisis, when it is critical for every organization to respond, do so many of us feel more paralyzed than focused? This has everything to do with how we handle the unknown. People can only handle so much ambiguity and uncertainty. Think of it a little bit like carbon monoxide poisoning. It doesn't matter if we're getting poisoned a little at the office and a little at home. The human body can only take so much before it crumbles. Jamie Holmes, in his book, Nonsense, The Power of Not Knowing, gives a powerful example of this. After the San Francisco earthquake in 1906, both marriage rates and divorce rates went up dramatically. And for years, sociologists debated whether the incredible devastation of living through the earthquake brought people together or drove them apart. But what had really happened was they couldn't handle any more uncertainty. If they'd been wavering about ending a relationship or starting one, the ambiguity of that crisis drove them to resolve the question abruptly. They simply could not take any more ambiguity. Right now, every organization that we're talking to has to adapt in some way because of the crisis. And because of that, that means new goals, new objectives, new projects. The problem is that those only raise ambiguity, because with a new project, with a new goal, you're never exactly sure how you're going to do it, or what the steps are, or if it's even the right thing to do, or will it work? Is it what we ought to be working on at all? This is not a resistance to work. Everybody's working. We're all working. But under times of heavy uncertainty, it's much more natural to focus on the day job and 4 disciplines, what we call the whirlwind, because even though right now for a lot of organizations, for most organizations, the whirlwind is incredibly intense, like we know it. It's familiar to us. And that's where people go. And that's why even though your organization might have a critically important burning platform, it's very difficult to get focus on strategic priorities. But what if the new goal, that critical response that your team needs to make right now, what if that goal did not raise ambiguity and uncertainty? What if that goal felt like a winnable game, a high stakes winnable game? What if it felt like the one area in my life where I'm actually doing something that makes sense and is going to make a difference? You do this, you get this right, and you have all the focus that you need. Now, the best way to illustrate this is with a simple but relatable example. And keep in mind, the idea that we can create something for our teams right now in the middle of the crisis that feels like a winnable game is very difficult to see at first. But I promise you it's there. Let's start by applying 7 very specific, simple guidelines to the following situation. You're a sales manager over new account development. You got 11 reps. working for you. You work for a software company servicing the home building industry. In April, for the first time in company history, you had no sales. And in May, for the first time in company history, there are no proposals under consideration, and you've spent hours looking at promotions and incentives, and none of it's having an impact whatsoever, and it feels utterly hopeless. However, wrestling with the idea of what a winnable game would even look like, you start to think about the fact that there were 53 organizations in your team's sales pipeline that were considering your product before the crisis hit. And discussing this with your team, you begin to wonder, what if we got our prospects using part of our tool, some of our applications that would be very relevant for them in our customers' post-crisis recovery? What if we gave it away? The first guideline is that you have to stop right here. You get one, okay? In addition to all the other crazy that's going on, in addition to all the things that you absolutely have to do, you get one of these per team at the same time. Think Derringer, not six-shooter. Now, this idea of investing in potential clients, right? This is bold. Nobody's ever done anything like this before. To your amazement, it's getting some support. Your team kind of can see the long-term benefits of this. But remember, this is not a goal, not yet. This is only a concept. It might feel like a goal. We all know, we all get it, we all understand. It's very difficult to execute on a concept. The second guideline is to aim at a target, not a concept. We need a starting line, a finish line, and a deadline. And everything inside of you right now will want to resist this because there's so much uncertainty. I don't know what's going to happen next month, and I'm not sure if I could say, we know this is for the purpose of execution. Now, after getting some input from the team, you draw a line in the sand. You say that by July 31st, we are going to get 20 of our 53 prospective clients using analytical applications. Now, is this achievement going to make everything okay? Nope. And it certainly isn't going to help a bit in second quarter, but it is starting to feel like something that you could win at, and it might make a significant difference before the end of the year. However, there is a problem. Your team on its own can't really own this goal, and that is the third guideline. In order to achieve this goal, you're going to need help from some other parts of the organization. You talk to both customer care and implementation, you secure their support, and you are past the third guideline. The fourth guideline, gain leverage, or as we say in the 4 disciplines of execution, act on the lead measures. This is the crux of the whole thing. This will determine whether this is truly winnable, whether this is achievable. We're trying to identify measurable actions, just a few, that can be used the way a person might use a lever to move a rock. Levers have 2 characteristics. First, they're something that we can influence. We can't move the rock, but the lever is directly influenceable, and when the lever moves, the rock moves. The lever is predictive of success. Identifying these leverage points, these lead measures, this is an activity where you want the team members heavily involved in. Trust me, we learned this the hard way. This has to feel a little bit like solving a riddle. You start off and you give them a whole series of options. They start to whittle it down. The first lead measure they come up with, each rep is going to have 2 conversations per week with one of the prospective clients about that client's recovery efforts. They're going to do that in the month of May. In the month of June, this is their second lead measure. Each rep will be able to do 3 demos, and the team looks you in the face and says, we feel like if we can do the leads, we can get the lags. If we can do the leads, this is an achievable objective. The 5th guideline, keep score. You don't yet have a winnable game. You're close. You have a winnable hypothesis, and that's important, but it's not the same thing. You are looking to throw the game on switch, and that doesn't happen until the game goes live, and that means a scoreboard. In the 4 disciplines of execution, we call this keeping a compelling scoreboard. This needs to feel like the team scoreboard more than the leader scoreboard. The team needs to see, are we winning or losing in real time against both the lead and the lag measures? If you haven't experienced this before, I think you'll be pleasantly surprised how different people play when they are keeping score. The sixth guideline, make and report on weekly commitments. The sixth guideline has everything to do with ensuring that this winnable game feels like a high stakes game. In the middle of a crisis, this is critical. There's so much going on. There's so many moving parts that you can lose even the most critical priorities. We remind leaders that maintaining the team's energy and engagement has much less to do with how you launch the game and much more to do with how the leader is playing the game. This happens through a weekly meeting set at the same time where you and your team members make commitments, just a few, that are going to directly impact the scoreboard. For instance, Julie is going to research housing trends in North Carolina before she calls on Marty from Raleigh. Marcus is going to get the contact information for Margot, the new CIO of Foundation Builders. You're going to put force against leverage every single week. The seventh and final guideline, acknowledge even the small wins. In a really important game, small wins are a big deal. This is a very easy way to communicate to the team that what you're doing really matters. And in the face of all the other competing priorities in the middle of a crisis, that is critical. You don't have to look further than your own experiences to know that the moments in your life, in your career, when you were most engaged, two things were going on. You felt like you were winning, you were making progress, and it mattered. It was a high-stakes, winnable game. Over the last 18 years, I've been personally affected by watching leaders with far greater experience than I have apply this approach, sometimes in brutal situations, in order to keep the hearts and the minds of their people. This has changed the way I look at leadership. And probably more important, the way I look at parenting, which is a big deal given that my wife and I have 7 children. All but the youngest are or have been teenagers. And anyone who has raised teenagers understands that there's going to be drama in that child's life. It's different depending on the child, but there's always drama. And like any parents, we've tried to help as much as we could with the drama of the moment. But somewhere along the line, that stopped being our primary focus. And instead, with each child, we began to look for one thing, one area in their life where they could win at something that mattered, one meaningful, winnable game. And with each one of them, I am grateful to say, once they had that, their ability to manage everything else changed completely. During times of chaos and uncertainty, I believe that the most important question a leader should ask themselves is, do the people who work for me feel they're winning at something that matters?